Welcome to Discovering. We're hiking into a backcountry cabin and fishing for trout in the Porcupine Mountains. Dinner. Sit back, put your feet up, and come on along. It's Monday night and time for Discovering.
The secret streams that flow beneath the cliffs of colored stone. Forest thick and healthy with birch and pine and oak. Surrounded by the greatest lakes this world has ever known. The black bear's awesome presence as he roams the hills and fields. Call of the timber wolf, the loon's lonesome trill. The eagle soaring high above, the trout lies deep and still. These are what I treasure, the only way I measure feelings that I have for this fine land. There is so much to discover when you're a long-time lover of northern Michigan.
As the warm summer temperatures increase across the Upper Peninsula, so does the list of things to do. And somewhere near the top of my list is camping. Camping comes in many forms. Whether you're spending the night in a camper, a tent, or a cabin, you're in the woods, and that's what counts. For this adventure, it would be a backcountry cabin in the Porkies, and the only way to get there is to hike.
We've got 17 different rustic cabins in the park. They're spread throughout the park. They range in size from a 2-bunk, which accommodates 2 people, all the way up in size to an 8-bunk cabin. And some of these cabins are pretty old. Some of them have got a lot of tradition associated with them. In fact, the Mirror Lake 8-bunk cabin out on Mirror Lake is the oldest park-built cabin. That cabin was built in 1945 in the very early years when the park was actually established. So there's lots of different camping options here. You can go stay in a cabin. You can stay in, we've got 4 different yurts in the park. We've got backcountry camping. We've got modern camping. We've got rustic campsites. Lots of different options. We even have a modern lodge, which sleeps 12 people. It even comes with linen service, and it's got washing machines and everything. It's fully equipped. So there's from full range. No matter how rustic you want to be or don't want to be, we can accommodate.
Our destination was a cabin on Mirror Lake. About a 3-mile trek on the South Mirror Lake Trail. 3 miles of gorgeous UP wilderness.
Most of the cabins require a hike, anywhere from a 1 to 4 mile hike in. The one exception is our Gitchagumi cabin, which is right along the shore of Lake Superior, and that's one that you can drive into. All the rest of them you do have to hike into, and 4 miles being about the furthest hike you'd have to go this time of year. That changes in the winter, because some of the cabins are open in the winter, and as are all 4 of our yurts are all open in the winter, and some of them can be a little bit further to get to, a little bit more of an adventure in the winter. The closest cabins would be, well, Gitchagumi, the one that you can actually drive up to, and then there's a few others that are within a mile walking distance. Whitetail Cabin is a pretty popular one right on the shore of Lake Superior. Union River Cabin right on the Union River. Both of those are about a mile hike to get into. If you want a small little, a quaint little cabin, our White Birch Cabin is also an easy little hike and kind of a nice secluded location on the eastern end of the park. So if you don't have enough time to stay at Mirror Lake, one of the cabins or one of the campsites, but maybe you want to see it, there's actually a nice 5-mile loop that you can do to hike out there and just do a day trip out to Mirror Lake. Start at the Summit Peak Tower, follow the trail in, that'll take you to the South Mirror Lake Trail, go up to the lake, and then follow the Little Carp River Trail back, and then that ties in with actually one of my favorite trails in the park is called the Beaver Creek Trail, and that makes a great little 5-mile loop that all starts right at the end of the Summit Peak Road. There's tons of day hiking opportunities here, yeah, depending on how far you want to go. There's some great, 12-mile loops that you can do, and other people just, maybe they'll tackle some of the longer linear trails. Maybe they'll walk 5 miles down, turn around and walk 5 miles back, and obviously some of the premier hiking are the trail along Lake of the Clouds area, the Escarpment Trail, and then also on the other side would be the Big Carp River Trail. Some of those, the views up there are just phenomenal. So the forest cover around the Mirror Lake area is really neat. It's right in the heart of the old growth forest of the park. So if you're not really familiar with the place, the Porcupine Mountains was designated a state park because of a group of spirited citizens who really felt it was important to preserve the last large tract of forest area in the upper Midwest that hadn't been logged. So we've got 35,000 acres of old growth northern hardwoods, and some of that area that's around Mirror Lake is some of the most scenic areas of the old growth forest. You get the big white pines out there, you got the hemlocks, you got a nice mix of hardwood trees. You can find big old red oaks out there, big sugar maples, big yellow birches, and the forest cover out there around Mirror Lake area is really beautiful. We constantly hear from visitors that they just didn't realize there was anything like this in the Midwest. These are rustic cabins, so we do equip them with pots and pans. There's plates, silverware, bowls, cups. There's even an old-fashioned, percolator style coffee maker in there. But you need to provide any consumable items. So you need to, bring your toilet paper with you. You need to provide lighting. There's a wood stove inside the cabin, but we don't recommend trying to cook on that because in the summertime it'd just be too hot in the cabin. So bring a little backpacker style camp stove with you. Bring something to treat or filter the water that you're going to be collecting from nearby water sources. There's not water pumps at these cabins, so you have to treat surface water, so either boil it or filter it properly. The cabins all have outhouses. So all of our rustic cabins cost $65 a night. Doesn't matter how many bunks that it has, and the yurts are the same price as well. And you can make reservations for those as much as 6 months in advance from when you want to come visit the park. And you can make reservations right from our webpage. Go to michigan.gov/porkies and click on the tab that says make a reservation. And get your reservation in because these cabins are pretty popular. When you get back into some of these cabins, there's a lot of solitude out there. You're pretty far from any roads and any population centers, and I think that's what appeals to a lot of the people that come out here. Yeah, we've only got the 2 roads in the park: South Boundary Road on the southern perimeter of the park, and then 107 that goes up to Lake of the Clouds. So when you're at a place like Mirror Lake, you are more than 2-3 miles from the nearest road. So it's pretty quiet, it's pretty peaceful out there, and I think probably the thing that really seems to appeal to a lot of people nowadays in these busy, hectic lives that we have is just how it's a step back to a little simpler time. You make some firewood, and you kind of procure the stuff, and you go out and you do your activities for the day, and yeah, it's a pretty special spot. I think you're going to really enjoy it if you get a chance to get out and experience some of these cabins. One thing real appealing about the cabins is their location and the ability to use a cabin like a base camp. So you can hike all your gear into your cabin, stay for a few days, and then get out and hike some of the trails in the park. So we've got 90 miles of hiking trails in the park, so it's a big place. The park's 60,000 acres in size, and it's pretty hard to experience all of that, at one time. But staying in a cabin or a backcountry campsite really gives you that ability to really explore the backcountry of the park. So, for example, like if you're staying at Mirror Lake, a great hike to do is you can hike down the correction line, down to the Big Carp River Trail. And if you've not ever seen that trail, it parallels the Big Carp River. It's got a lot of waterfalls on there. It's a great fishing river. And if you're really adventurous, maybe you'll want to hike as far as Shining Cloud Falls, which is definitely one of the premier interior waterfalls that we have in the park. So there's a lot of opportunity, a lot of great hiking opportunity, fishing opportunity, a lot of just great recreation opportunity here. Some of our cabins are open all year round. All 4 of our yurts are open year round, and then the remaining cabins are open seasonally. And that season, especially in the spring, kind of fluctuates, from the time when South Boundary Road melts back and gets opened up. Usually around the beginning of May is the earliest that you can check in and make a reservation for one of these cabins up until the end of deer season. So they're open through the end of November. When you're staying in the cabins, you know, the protocol is that you clean up after yourself. So leave the place either as clean or cleaner than what you find it. So that means packing out, you know, all the garbage and stuff that you brought. And if you find stuff along the way, boy, it sure goes a long way if everybody picks up a little piece of garbage here and there. It really helps keep this park nice and clean. So we got a lot of backpackers in the park. We've got 90 miles of hiking trails through the park. And if you camp at one of the established backcountry campsites in the park, the campsites are equipped with a metal fire ring, so you can have a ground fire there. If you're camping off-site, no fire is allowed. So fire is only in the designated metal fire rings. And then if you're backcountry camping also at one of those designated sites, then there's going to be a bear pole that you can secure all your scented items in. So your food, you know, if you bring toothpaste, things like that, make sure all that goes in a special bag and that you hoist it up into one of these bear poles in the evening hours and overnight. So some of the cabins in the park are on inland lakes. So we've got our Lake of the Clouds cabin. So on our map, we got Lake of the Clouds here. Right on Lake of the Clouds, there's a cabin nestled on Lake of the Clouds. We've got 3 cabins that are on Mirror Lake and 1 cabin that's on Lily Pond. All of those cabins all come equipped with either a boat and or a canoe so that you can get out and you can fish those lakes that you're standing right out, you know, you're camping right in front of. The cabins are equipped with the appropriate PFDs and paddles and or oars. There's a lot of different fishing opportunities in the parks, and in some cases there are some special regulations that you need to know about. For example, Lake of the Clouds, no live bait allowed on Lake of the Clouds, so it's artificial lures only. And that lake is loaded with smallmouth bass, but it is catch and release only on the smallmouth bass. If you catch panfish, you can keep the panfish in Lake of the Clouds. Whereas Mirror Lake's a trout lake. It's deeper and it's got lots of trout in there, so that one just falls under the typical Michigan regulations for trout lake. Then there's lots of trout streams in the park that's all got a lot of the native brook trout in them. We've got several rivers in the park that get salmon or steelhead runs in them in the spring and or fall. And plus a lot of people in the park will fish offshore, you know, just fish the big water, Lake Superior, the shore of Lake Superior from the rocky shores, and catch anything from lake trout to steelhead. And I'm sure some people probably catch some whitefish and various other fish, coho. A lot of fishing opportunity here.
Just simple fishing. Nothing fancy. Just a hook, a split shot, and a half a night crawler. Water temp? Don't know. Depth? Not sure. I kind of like it that way sometimes, I guess. And here in a place like this, it just feels right. I don't need the biggest fish in the lake. And other than a couple for dinner, I really don't care that much how many we catch. I just need to sit in my rowboat with a rod in my hand, a line in the water, and listen to the overwhelming sounds of silence. Beautiful fish.
Yeah, no doubt. Oh, I did before, you didn't get it?
A little too small for dinner.
Yeah, we'll get more, I'm sure.
Now that looks a little more like dinner.
Feels like it.
Nice job.
It's a little bit bigger. It's just all wrapped up.
Dinner.
It's about time.
Looks like a keeper, huh?
Yeah.
Looks like you've got your dinner and mine too. Sometimes the best part of being on a lake is a boat. Sometimes the best part of being in a boat is fishing. And sometimes the best part of fishing is eating. I've said it before, one of my favorite parts of camping is waking up in the woods. The sound of a fire, the smell of coffee brewing, topped off with a little fishing in my front yard before breakfast. No matter how the day goes from there on, it's all good, even if it rains. First a little, then a bit more. Eventually just a steady shower. Certainly not enough to ruin the day or the trip, but enough to move the kitchen into the cabin. The breakfast menu is limited by what you want to carry and what you can store. But that's okay. I'll take a bag of eggs and a pancake in a cabin over Eggs Benedict in a restaurant about any day.
done.
The rain did indeed continue, and it was time to head out. We were certainly in no hurry to hit the trail, and that's got nothing to do with the rain. We packed up our gear, covered up our backpacks with whatever we could find, and began the trek out. The Porcupine Mountains State Park is over 60,000 acres of virgin timber, secluded lakes, winding streams, miles of hiking possibilities, campsites of all kinds, cabins from one end of the spectrum to the other, and a truly must-see Upper Peninsula gem. You don't need any special equipment or a ton of backwoods knowledge to get started. Those things are great add-ons. Take a short walk to Lake of the Clouds or a scenic backcountry hike to Summit Peak. Step it up a notch and stay in a cabin, or another notch and camp out. As our short adventure here comes to a close, a rainy hike and a way too heavy backpack make the Jeep a welcome sight. But a couple of ibuprofens and a dry hat and I'd turn around in a heartbeat and head right back in if I had the time. I know I'll be back for certain. We're already planning the next trip. Maybe some backcountry camping on Lake of the Clouds, or maybe along the Lake Superior shoreline, or maybe a hike in along the Carp River for some brook trout. Another great trip would be fishing steelhead in the spring along the mouth of the... Well, that's it for tonight. If you'd like to keep tabs on what's coming up on Discovering or see where we've been, you can join us on Facebook or go to 906outdoors.com. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week right here on Discovering.